All right, everybody, welcome. Just as a quick starting note, we are on a rather tight timeline. Dr. Zhao does have a plane to catch this evening, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome to all of our valued staff. We are very excited to have the opportunity to collaborate with Dr. Zhao, who is generously visiting our district pro bono in partnership to work towards transforming education for the world-class learner. Dr. Zhao has spent the last 2 days working with a number of groups in our district to set the stage for our work in the upcoming school year. The format for this evening's presentation will consist of 3 segments in which Dr. Zhao will address topics from our world-class education department, our assessment and systems performance department, as well as our PK-12 leadership team. Each segment will be followed by an opportunity for our audience, both live and virtual, to propose questions to Dr. Zhao. We will be soliciting questions through 3 back channels, in combination with questions from our administrators that were gathered at last week's PK-12 admin meeting. Each of the back channels will be moderated by a staff member from the Center for Professional Development. To participate in a back channel, which is a space where you can share your thoughts, ask questions, or share resources that relate to the presentation, you have 3 different options. Your first is using Today's Meet, which requires no login. Simply go to todaysmeet.com/Yong Zhao, type in your name, and click Join. You'll then have the ability to post your thoughts or questions throughout the evening. There is a 340 character limit to post, so please be concise in your wording. Edmodo is our second option. In order to participate in this back channel option, you will need to log into Edmodo and join the group. The code is listed here on this slide. Twitter, for those of you who tweet like myself, this is our third back channel option, and we will be using the hashtag DCSDWCE throughout the evening if you'd like to participate in that Twitter discussion to post your questions. As with Today's Meet, there is a 140 character limit in Twitter. We'd like to start our evening off with a brief introduction from Dr. Fagan, and then we'll move into our first of our 3 topics for this evening.
Well, welcome everyone. Thanks for being here on this snowy afternoon. We eventually will make it to spring, I think. But luckily, the roads were wet. Hopefully that was what you experienced. That's what I experienced today. Thank you for being here. We have had an absolutely fantastic 2 days in the Douglas County School District with Dr. Yong Zhao, who, as you all know, is the author of World-Class Learners, one of the sort of foundational pieces of our work the last 2 years and sort of our plan for change for our students. And his work has been fundamental to the work that we want to do together as a school district and fundamental to the work that all of you, many of you, have been doing together with various leadership teams throughout the district. So I am so honored to have Dr. Zhao here. He has, in each instance, as he's worked with different groups of people throughout our district, almost to the person, people have come up to me and said, wow, I really thought that I had gotten outside the box. And what Dr. Zhao did today was stretch me even further. I mean, I thought I was here, and now I can see that I can go here. And so I hope that today and this afternoon you have this exact same opportunity. I'm 99% certain that will be the case. So with that, I would like to introduce Dr. Yong Zhao, professor at the University of Oregon, author of World-Class Learners, and amazing educational expert.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Go ahead.
All right,
Thank you very much.
Zhao. We will begin with the topic from our World-Class Education Department. Can you please share with us your thoughts on the role of curriculum in a world-class education?
Well, first, thank you very much, and I'm also thankful that you actually brought a tree for me. It's very nice. So it's not entirely pro bono. I have a tree here. It's nice, and also you've been working hard to give me the full kind of treatment. You gave me great summer weather yesterday, and make sure I get out with your snow. So you're very nice people, and so thank you for that. Well, I think the big issue in a school we often talk about is we kept working on the curriculum. You know, that's, I think, an old concept of a curriculum. A curriculum basically was useful when you can expect every child to master the same knowledge, the same content. And that is, you know, traditionally we try to describe something that's desired by society or desired by jobs. I call that employee-oriented education. Right now, you know, we are facing this issue called something called the Common Core. I'm sure you've heard of this thing, right? Even though you're in snowy Colorado, you still have something called Common Core, right? Do you have you know what the Common Core is, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, also, I'm sure you know. So I've been a very vocal opponent of the Common Core people. And people, sometimes they interpret that I don't like Standards, actually. I said I always like standards. I love the Common Core standards if they're not common or core. It'd be great. So the idea is that because traditionally we always predict what future might need. So in my thinking now, in the 21st century, actually for the world class, is that if education is about making sure every child become his or her best, become the most creative and entrepreneur herself, and globally competent, then that kind of the general common curriculum for all students is not very useful. What you need is a personalized curriculum, personalized educational experience. So the standards, that's why I say I like if they're not a common core, be useful. When you only have 2 subjects or 3 subjects or 4 subjects, by including, you are excluding. Imagine you said, okay, we're thinking about math and science as the most important. And your ability to get to score well on the TCAP or something else in math and science becomes a measure of your ability. So all other students might be otherwise talented will become not very useful, right? So they feel very bad. They're not smart enough to be in this one. So I think a 21st century education truly should be driving to, if Douglas County wants to go this way, you really should provide a personalized education, not only personalized learning. You make sure everyone becomes a better themselves. So you do not fix their deficit, because curriculum also outlines expectations. That's why we have the idea, oh, you are not reading at a 3rd grade level. Who says we should be reading at 3rd grade level anyway, right? It's my kid. I'd be happy to have my kids read at, I don't know, her own level. So do you see what I mean? It's not meeting somebody else. The curriculum with the Common Core and others, they're trying to build a great curriculum. One mistake they also make is ignore that children are different. Children develop differently. So I'm going to give you one simple example. Some of you have had children. Think about physical growth, height, right? If you think about average, you say, oh, Americans, average height may be like, say, 5'8". I don't know. Some of you guys are pretty tall here. I don't know. Let's say 5'8". It's average 5'8". Then do you think, as a grade level progression curriculum, each year it should grow by 3 inches? For example, right? And you should grow that. And your children, normally you go to pediatrician all the time. If they did not grow through 3 inches in the last 12 months, you are in trouble, right? But what are you going to do? You fed this guy, this kid, carrots, milk, and calcium, everything you did, The only thing you can do is stretch him at night, that's the only thing you can do. So that's the assumption we make. People make progress like that. They don't. Actually, that's the idea. So anyway, in the 21st century, I think personalized education, curriculum can serve as guideposts, as references. They can be very useful, but not as gateways, not as imposed upon all children.
All right. Thank you very much for sharing your thoughts. And now we'd like to ask you a few questions from our back channel. Give me just a second here to grab one. Okay, so in thinking about the topic of curriculum and standards, how do we release ourselves really to move beyond that Common Core and also support our teachers and community in that shift, and also to ensure success for our students as they transition into this style of entrepreneurial thinking?
Well, I think the district, from my conversation with a lot of curriculum people and a lot of your superintendent, your leaders, I think you've got it right, because right now you have the confidence to believe the Common Core so far is actually very basic. It's so basic it's not worth talking about. You guys have the confidence. I hope that's the real message again. If you look at the Common Core, it's actually very silly. And I also have been praising that Douglas County, a lot of your children, due to very happy ovarian accidents, are born into good families. They come to school. Most of them can, some of them perhaps were able to read before they were born. You got all those kind of interesting cases. So the Common Core, I think you should treat that as something really basic, and also never treat something like Common Core as a gateway. Even though it's basic, you will still have some children who may have other talents, who may not be able to even meet the so-called Common Core standards. You should allow those exceptions to happen. This is something I want to talk about. Is in our life, we tend to think about everybody can progress the same way. We claim there should be a same common basics. We claim,
But there are a few exceptionally great talents who may not be able to read at the time you want them. You should let them survive. You should let them, because reading is not everything. I think sometimes we're obsessed, you have to be able to read by this age. If you can read as if something, I was actually on the radio show with Dr. Fagan. I was joking about this then. Gutenberg should be blamed for illiteracy problems. Before he invented this darn thing to make reading so popular, nobody had to read, Actually, illiteracy was a common thing, right? Nobody cared if you couldn't read. And actually, it was in my little village in China, it's the same thing. If you didn't read, it was not a problem. Because in my village, the common core was driving the water buffalo. It was a different thing. If you couldn't drive the water buffalo, it's a problem. So I was able to read, but I couldn't drive the water buffalo. And they forgive me. They said, go to Douglas County. That's what I left. That's how it happened. So what you always say that, I was not good, seriously. So you always try to say, allow a way for people to get out. This I always want to come back to about this balance. You read Howard Gardner. You heard a lot of people talk about multiple intelligences, diversity thinking. But honestly, most of us are not very serious about it in our thinking. In your teaching, we don't really come in our mind all the time. When you design a school, that should be the first thing you should think about. Human beings are diverse. We are very different. And that means, what does that mean? It means really two simple things. One is that you cannot be good or great at everything. You can be mediocre at everything. Right? You can make everybody just good enough or bad enough at everything. But you cannot be possibly be great at everything. You can be great in music. By the same token, you cannot be great in everything else. I've been studying a lot of great people. Think about Albert Einstein was a pretty great guy, right? You think he was good physicist, a great musician, was about it. Write poetry too. But he was a horrible, horrible husband and father. You don't want to marry him. Seriously, guys, you don't want. That's the same thing. So but also by the same token, the number two is that you have to think about if you are not good at something, you must be great at something else. If you are extremely bad at something, you must be extremely good at something. You just don't know yet. Just keep looking for that part. And things change. We think about dyslexia. 100 years ago was horrible. Just dyslexia means causes reading difficulties. But dyslexic people have different visual perception. They are very good at art. They make great astrophysicists because they look at the map, star map differently. They can find black holes more efficiently than other people. So if you look at a lot of astrophysicists, they're great artists. So the issue is that 100 years ago, reading was more important than being an artist or astrophysicist. So dyslexic was considered deficit. Never was to develop, we try to wipe it out. Today, gradually, when we recognize that's actually something good, so you can change the whole idea. So back to the common core question, it is really about gateway and opportunities. In schools, we should provide as many opportunities as possible, but never turn one opportunity as something we should hold people back. The common core, another thing I tell is about Michael Phelps. He's a great swimmer guy, right? ADHD, he may not be able to read very well. If you want to make sure he could read first, he would still be hooked on phonics in some basement. You wouldn't let him off, right? That's the kind of thing. So that's something we need to think about. We're still in topic 1, right?
Yes, we are still in topic 1. We have a few other questions for you, Dr. Zhao. If we'd like to address a few more. We do have a couple of other ones that are coming in through our back channels. I think we can kind of tackle these two with one stone here, kill two birds with one stone. How do we move towards this entrepreneurial spirit in learning? By the way, we have about 40% of our audience that's in the Edmodo back channel. We're running polls who say they feel fairly comfortable with providing entrepreneurial opportunities for students. Just a little bit of data for you. And can you also please share your thinking about teach less and learn more?
Okay, yeah.
Those two things.
Well, that's actually very good. One of the things I have been critical of after observing education system in different places. By the way, I was born and raised in China. I taught middle school and college in China, and I came here when I was 27. So I kind of experienced that education system very well. In the U.S., even though I mostly taught in college, but I've worked with a lot of schools, and I used to run computer clubhouses for middle school in Michigan, 5 years. We run 20 of them.
I have designed bilingual immersion schools in China and Michigan from kindergarten on. I've written computer software for learning Mandarin, computer MMORPG, massively multiplayer online role-playing games. I've designed a lot of software, different things, and so this way, just to make sure you believe, actually, I know what teaching is like. I also have 2 kids too. I've been a parent. I must know what good education is. So that justifies my credibility and expertise. Okay, let me think about this. So when I observed, I think a lot of our schools, by being trying to fulfill the obligation of prescribed curriculum, we're teaching our children to become good employees. You probably noticed this. When they come to a school, after 3rd or 4th grade, the big slump of creativity or entrepreneurship, they began to treat school as a job, as actually a very bad, mediocre, boring job. They come ask you to say, so what do I have to do, right? So I get that even in college. You said, so what do I have to do, Dr. Zhao, to get an A? And now I actually have tend to say, okay, you start with the A already, so just don't ruin your A. So you get an A, okay? You've paid for an A already, so you have to find a way to ruin it, okay? So then I got PhD students, the same thing. They come to us, Dr. Zhao, what do you want? I said, I don't want anything. You've paid already. You've paid with money and time. I'm happy you don't do anything because I don't have to work, just listen. And so then actually I'll come back to seriously, okay? What do you want to get out of it? Why did you buy me to work for you? So that's turntable. So you want students to say, I am here to serve your need. You have to become an entrepreneur to make use of my resource. I'm your resource to fulfill your goal. Yesterday, I think we talked about this idea, how our children, especially in the industrial age, our children, after they're born, they have an existential problem because they have no functional usefulness in our society until they're graduate from college. All the time, they are finding a way to be genuinely useful. Like our kids, they're not very useful. Their only usefulness is to bring home a few A's to make parents feel happy. See that what I mean? Because any of the learning, the resources they have, they're not contributing to an authentic way. That's the problem. So they are basically learning to become good consumers of knowledge. So the entrepreneur part of learning, I hope what you can do in our teaching, as I outlined in the book. Number 1 is, can we engage in product-oriented teaching or learning? That is, children each year or each term to really create something, a product, a service that's of use to somebody. Can be just meaningful to themselves. I would call authenticity. We spent so many years, 12 years learning English. Children have been writing about in English for a long time. But in many countries, they're desperate for English materials. Why can't we get our kids writing English textbooks, personalized stories, novels, make English movies, for people in China, in Japan, in Thailand who want to learn this thing? Why can't you have your students run like English tutoring services for kids, immigrant children come into your schools? So we do this all the time. But they want to produce something. So that's entrepreneur. Entrepreneur basically means we do not follow simple instructions or directions. We make use of you as resources. I think teachers, this is a good way to transfer the responsibility of learning from teaching to learning. So it really just become, to get started, it's very hard to get started. You should really, the first lesson you go to a class, you say, well, you be lazy. Just be lazy. If students want to be lazy, I say, I'm going to be lazier than you. And I just have a little competition. And to say this thing, I don't know if you ever tried. Sometimes I just try this thing. You get a bunch of kids and say in there, you go into the classroom and say, hey, what do you guys want to do? They may say nothing. I may say, well, I don't want to do anything. Try if you can truly waste 45 minutes without doing anything. Somebody is going to feel uncomfortable. I'm not going to be interested. Someone is going to feel bad and they will try to do something. So that's how we get started with some of the ideas. And also, of course, you want to be nice. You can say, well, I'm good at this. This is a science course. This is biology. These are the possible things we could do. Let's try this. You can get going, start with that. Or if you really want to become nasty, you say, well, I don't really care. It's why do I care? You come to my class. I didn't ask you to come. You came by yourself. What do you want me to do? Stuff like that. It's the overall, as parents, we need to really make sure children take charge of their own learning, to find their value in serving other people's needs. That's really very much the entrepreneur piece, entrepreneur learning. And this idea about teach less and learn more is that this from original Singapore slogan. Singapore government has been launched an education reform called, well, they have one wave called Thinking Schools, Learning Nation. So it means they want schools to be able to think. Then another reform is called teach less and learn more. I think it has really two type of meanings. Do we have a lot of early childhood first graders, elementary school teachers, principals? Okay, great. Thank you very much. So you know, there's a lot of new research showing now in psychology. Children are naturally very curious, entrepreneur, they want to pursue knowledge. But if you begin to feed them answers really fast, quickly, they're not going to be curious. So the faster you teach them something, the less likely they're going to be curious. It's because they learn, my job is just to memorize what do you do, what do you know. They will stop, seeking knowledge. That is one of it. Another idea is about, in a lot of times, our teachers are driven by a curriculum. So we're busy, have a pacing guide. They have to cover so many topics, in a week, in a. And so that's more like, the idea that we care about teaching, we don't care about learning, right? So you can say, this checked off. I've taught so much already, but we don't care about learning. So what you want to do, make sure that students are pursuing learning. The less you teach, actually, the more likely they might learn. So I was suggesting one of your evaluation criteria is to say, how often do your students expand their search on Google, Wikipedia after your class without requiring them to what to do? So they say, how often do they do that? You want to make this, their job to do something. I'm honestly, with my two children, very, very rarely, after they've done something in the class, they won't expand that, which is very sad. And I think all of you, for example, you are the entrepreneurial teachers because you come here on your own. So I don't know if Liz is going to hand you like $5 after you walk out of the. I don't know if that's part of a walking out the door. You guys have checks over there. If that's not the reason, because you have a genuine reason to want to learn more, to expand your thinking. So that's what entrepreneur learning is really about.
Wonderful. Well, this certainly gives us a great deal to think about in terms of the role of curriculum in a world-class education. So our second topic for this evening comes from our Assessment and System Performance Department. And we'd like to hear what you think about the topic of collaboration as a genuine part of authentic assessment practice.
Well, this section touches some very interesting thing because I've been challenging the concept that everyone needs to learn how to collaborate. Not necessarily. Like someone said, well, we need to train people to become leaders. Leadership is important. I think sometimes followership is important as well. So you have to always think about this, the opposite. Collaboration, I think, is not, sometimes it's been interpreted only as cognitive skills, like learn how to collaborate. A lot of the times, I think human life has to do with the motivational, the affective domain skills. So first of all, if you are really interested in collaborating with somebody, you will try to find a way to suck up to them. You will do that. That's basically. So I think the first important thing is not about teaching them how to collaborate. Human beings are born social. Do you guys know this? We're born social. We can't be by ourselves for too long. That means we have to hang out with other people. That's something we want to do. And of course, different cultures have different ways of sharing and that collaboration. There's different social norms you have to follow. That's a different story. So in terms of this way, and also I don't think collaboration works everywhere. There are different types of collaboration. There's big discussion about collaborative learning, cooperative learning. You've learned of those kind of things. So what does collaboration mean? That means that one type of collaboration is what I call outsourcing. Okay? So you guys have snowing down here, right? So it's and you don't want to mow your snow, because you hire somebody to remove your snow. That's collaboration, right? You outsource job to somebody else to do it. That's great collaboration. Don't you think that's actually genuine collaboration? You outsource your weakness to somebody else. So do you do that in your schools? I'm sure Tony Wagner told you the same thing. Do you do that in your schools? You have a kid who is great at drawing pictures,
but not interested in math. Now your math requires drawing on the picture. So one kid does the math for this kid, and this kid does the drawing for the other one. You call cheating, but that's good collaboration, right? It's don't you think, right? That's what it's called hyper specialization. So another area of action collaboration, we said collaboration doesn't work all the time. It's not really required. A lot of times we need solitude. Think about, again, I use J.K. Rowling as an example. If she had been collaborating, Harry Potter would be a horrible novel. Have you ever seen a comedian writing a great novel? A committee of 10, right? Let's produce the best novel. You don't. It's a lot of those need solitude. So I think a lot of times when we use those things, it again goes back to my argument about a personalized approach. And if you want to measure collaboration, you have to measure about the context. A lot of our learning is very much situation dependent. Sometimes you want to collaborate, sometimes you don't want to collaborate. Sometimes you hate to collaborate with certain type of people. That's so I would like to think about when you do this assessment. Collaboration is definitely important, but a lot of the slogans we need to drill down with us. I talked with the assessment team this morning, and I think your leadership is very sensitive to redefine a lot of this called slogans, definitions. The devil is always in the details. Something always sounds good, but then when it does it, it's very different. So, for example, we are collaborating right now. We're doing different things. But again, if we did the same thing in our schools, we would not be allowed. So how do you assess? Does Kathleen know how to collaborate with me? She apparently is doing her own job. I'm doing the same thing. And you assess this thing, which is good. So I think we need to think context, task, and affective domain in terms of assessing collaboration, and also make sure, again, collaboration does not make it into a gateway. There's a lot of lonely kids. I was in Mark Zuckerberg's school recently, and he did not have friends. That's how he left middle school. So things, let kids be unknown. If they're genius, they think don't worry about the social skills. A lot of social weirdos become great people. You don't even have to worry about it. I know. As parents, we always, this kid doesn't have friends. I know in reading research, for example, we are always worried about, my kid is 8 months, still cannot read Shakespeare yet. I'm worried about that. But really, you reading, if you give them enough time, they will catch up. The same thing with social stuff. If they want to, Zuckerberg, he doesn't know how to collaborate. He apparently knows how to collaborate right now, right? He's also become a very social guy. He's trying to donate money to new work. He's doing all this kind of work now. So it's, again, context dependent. So do not make it a gateway. Like everybody has to become somebody else.
Excellent. As a follow-up to this interesting discussion about what things do we measure, we have a question that asks, I just lost it. What are the best ways to measure growth, specifically when you're measuring entrepreneurial skills, or should they even be measured?
Thank you. That's great. Whoever asked that question was just a genius. Okay,
I believe it came from one of our elementary teachers out there. Yes.
Well,
yeah.
That's actually because I really want to talk about this. With this new paradigm, because people are obsessed with knowing how good you are, right? We have this obsession. I want to know, is my child learning something, No, they're not learning, they're just wasting their time, You can just give them the answer. Children are always learning something. Trust me, they're always learning something. I worry about what they learn, actually. That's important. So what I think the new model, when you move to entrepreneur thinking, is not performance-based, it's really product-driven. If you look at, I always look how much they have improved, how much better they have than the first draft. If they wrote up an essay, it's an 8th grade essay. You look at the beginning, let's say in the beginning, that they're writing something, for example, why Castle Rock is so beautiful. I don't know why it's beautiful. It's not really beautiful, it's just something. But why? It's making an argument. And then you're writing that for a group of students in Japan who wants to learn about the Oregon Trail. Okay, because Castle Rock was the resting spot. So someone's writing this thing. And then you have the first draft. Most of our schools will end with the first draft. That's good or bad, just something we go there, shoot a nice photo, looks multimedia, to print it nicely. It's really bad writing, but just a picture which is really shadowy, not even the right frame, but yeah, we like it because it's kind of multimedia, But that's bad essay. Now we want the essay to be perfect, publishable, that people is willing to pay $5 to read it. Okay, how do you improve that after the draft? So I would look at it and say, how much better it has become over 2 months, 3 months. So that's where you look at every person. I will look at improvement. So when you tell the parents, this is what your kid came in with. Look, like 3 sentences. Castle Rock is beautiful. Now, actually, this person wrote about 10 sentences. Castle Rock is beautiful. Castle Rock is beautiful. That's not good. Okay, you have to say it is beautiful because, and had reasoning, had different kind of things, longer sentences, longer words, and multiple revisions going through this process. Boom, you can say more sophisticated thinking, better language, better usage, more more actual variety. Then that's how you improve. So everything you can do the same thing. Many of you, we have dancing teachers, theater teachers. When your kids, music teachers, you don't have this rubric. But the child comes in, actually many of you already know this, when they are in Suzuki program, the first week you want to go get as far away as possible from your daughter practicing violin, right? That's what it is. And then once the time you said, maybe you can measure by how many feet you want to be away from your daughter's violin when you practice. That's another assess. That's authentic assessment, right? Do you get closer or do you go the wrong way or those things? So that you know what's being improved. But it's always embedded in the final product. So multiple drafts. I would encourage all of you use online to track the different drafts they design. Math problems, science is all the same. It's always product-driven. Multiple drafts with peer review as great way to assess as formative assessment. So I talked to this morning with the assessment team. So overall, we need to measure, but the measure should not be artificially imposed upon. It should be always reflected in hard evidence that's embedded in products or services.
Excellent. So as a follow-up to that, and I think you discussed this a little bit, Dr. Zhao, I'd like you to maybe elaborate a little bit on the relationship between personalized learning pathways, because you're talking to that right now. Students have a personalized learning pathway, and progress monitoring or providing some sort of a balanced assessment system. So that idea of progress monitoring throughout a project-based or product-oriented learning process is really what we should be looking for when we're assessing our students.
Thank you. I think the first thing I should really lay out why I'm arguing for personalized education. It is really has a lot to do with my understanding of the 21st century. For a long time, human beings have always been diverse in their thinking, in their talents. But we had to narrow that, to homogenize that. Because like in my village, in my agriculture village, other talents are not very useful. Justin Bieber would be useless in my village. Who would want to listen to him? He couldn't make a living, right? You could have a Shakespeare in my village. Nobody would care, right? Because most of the talents that's valuable has to do with water buffalo. Also, in those cases, everybody's born with passion and creativity, but you don't need creativity or passion to get the sweet potatoes home. You don't need that. You just go do the work. So in the industrial age, the same thing. Think about the assembly line workers. Henry Ford. Think about those things. The 20th century industrialization. A lot of them we don't need a diversity. We need a lot of people to be of similar skills. No one wants to buy a car assembled by Lady Gaga, for example. Think about that. Do you want to buy that one? If you don't want, you don't need that kind of stuff. So all our schools were suppressing that diversity and creativity. We want you to become mediocre. But now in the 21st century, we have liberated. Now in the 21st century, we have arrived at the time almost every talent can be useful. I don't have time to explain the why and how, but just remember one thing. Trust me, if Lady Gaga is useful, anyone can be useful. Just remember that. So in that case, that's why we want a personalized learning. So you accept the fact that every talent can be useful. And also we live in the age of hyper-specialization. That means you should outsource something. If you make more money by being a good teacher, you should not go cut your grass. Spend some time being a better teacher in different ways. So you say, well, no, unless you love cutting grass as well, that's a different thing. So that's some of this we need to do. So in our education, I'm thinking a personalized education that supports the development of your individual talents. And that why is going to be very important. You've heard about differentiated instruction. You've heard about personalized learning. And now we're talking about big data-driven machine learning. Those things and not true personalized curriculum or personalized learning, because they are still wanting to arrive at the same destination. So say that's the fake one. I don't believe it. I really believe people should arrive at their own destination to redefine this thing. Schools like yours can do that. So what I would encourage you to do is to allow, even if you can do it right away, at least in your class, in your school, you should have find my strength movement. I was talking to your superintendent and others to say, your teachers should do the same. Find your own passion. Now ask your teacher, what are you good at? If you give your teachers, you can design your 20% of your courses by yourself. Teach whatever you like. What would you pick? Ask your students, what are you good at? And I think Natasha was just talking about, you go home, ask your student, why do you think the world even needs you? Why do we need you? What can you do? What's your strength? I think that's going to be a very interesting discussion to think about. So you can define this, not all the time, but 20%, 10% of the time. Just start by doing that. Even questioning that is valuable to do. But of course, schools have to be very flexible. In that case, teachers, you will have to become what I call consultants, not as someone to transmit knowledge. This also has to do with how teachers teach. 50 years ago, teachers were the only source of information. Remember, they come to the class, without you, the kids cannot really learn anything. They come here. So you have the dual responsibility of both holding the knowledge and transmitting the knowledge 50 years ago. Today, back channeling, Edmodo, even back channeling, they have so many back channels. Think about iPhone, right? If you want to Google anything, you can find it. So in the age of, if you can Google everything, why do we need a teacher? Right? It's because it redefines you are not there to transmit the knowledge, hold knowledge. You are the reason children will get on Google. You inspire, you motivate, because you help them define their own personal path. So if you can inspire someone to do something, that's their job. So in terms of personalized learning, it's really about personalizing the whole environment to meet individual needs. And you will take a back seat. You're not driving the instruction anymore. You basically say, okay, I'm a consultant. If you need me, I might do it. Or you can organize reasons for them in the classroom. So you change the whole idea. It's, again, going back to the idea of children driving their own learning. We define the whole thing. This morning with Pat and others, I said, with today's technology, with the resources you have, every child, truly, theoretically, if you don't stop them, they could construct their own personal global learning academy. If they want to learn any language, they could, if they're interested in it. Right? You don't have to offer 500 languages for them. They can find, if they want to learn any language, they can find it, if you allow them. If they want to learn some advanced biology, if you don't stop them, I bet they can find some genetic course from Yong University, maybe even for free, one of the MOOCs. When you think about those things, do you allow them? The problem is not only allow, do you cultivate them? Because in my book, I talk about personalization, mentoring, and tutoring. Children are children, right? You need to mentor them to learn how to manage that site. All of you went to college once. I hope so. And I don't know, but some of you got more out of it than others. Why? Because college was the same, right? College, besides most of your majors, is how you make it, right? Do you go to the library? Which friends you hang out? What lectures you participate in? What extracurricular activities? What professor research project you do? You were constructing your own learning environment. That's college, right? So, but somebody, if you're lucky, someone can advise you how to do that. In our schools, we need to assign every student a mentor to do that, to help them construct something like that. Because when you pursue your own interest, it doesn't mean you don't need basics. When you pursue interest, you actually don't know what to do anymore. For example, I want to be a great DJ. I don't know why, but I'm not good. But kids, that sounds good. I like to, but where do I go from there? How do I become one? Yeah, so that's where the guidance comes up. At least you say, well, you can tell us, well, I don't know, but Mr. Jones in that room might know. You want to talk to Mr. Jones. So that's the guidance we need. So personalized education needs a lot of guidance, needs a lot of personal touch. So teachers change their role, become advisors, mentors, consultants, and opportunity providers.
Wonderful. Well, and thank you to our participants in the back channels for proposing such thought-provoking questions. Our last topic for this evening comes from our PK-12 administration and from the Center for Professional Development. And these groups are hoping that you can address the changing role of leadership.
Well, in my book, I talk about entrepreneurs. Right now, entrepreneurs have been traditionally used to refer to people, set up a business, try to make some money from you, of you guys. It's changing. Entrepreneurs, we talk about entrepreneur spirit. There are 4 types of entrepreneurs now. The traditional business entrepreneurs who set up something, who try to maximize that business opportunity. There's a second type, we call them social entrepreneurs. People want to solve a social problem, a social inequity, environmental problems, social justice, all those kind of things. The third type we call them intrapreneurs. People work within an organization. Those are the creative people who work within that organization. The final one we call them policy entrepreneurs. So I'd like to view today's leadership in public sectors like this as policy entrepreneurs. So the difference between entrepreneur and employee is this. An entrepreneur sees a problem as an opportunity. An entrepreneur does not wait for someone to tell them what to do. So to say, okay, I have a series of orders I have to carry out. Okay, an entrepreneur is able to come up with creative solutions, not just to borrow somebody else. More importantly, the entrepreneur is willing to take risk and has the resilience to see their action through. Because none of the changes are going to be easy. So today's, I think, today's leaders, in that sense, they really have to be able to confront problems fast. So I view every teacher as a leader too in your classroom. There's no prescription. Well, this is one of the reasons I'm so opposed to this mandate from different levels, because people have to have your autonomy. When you have autonomy, you become entrepreneur in your own way. You can't be just following this whole idea. So we have a lot of leaders. I view everybody as a leader and a follower, just different times. We should study followership somehow. Someone has to study that. And so you have to have this ability to confront tough issues. All teachers have the same issue. So that's that aside. But also when you lead an organization, when I look at today's leaders, today's leaders are engaged in the ability of push for change. But we should always be careful about change. Not all change are good. We all automatically assume change is good. So I think Dr. Fagan and others really resonated with one of the things I talk about. I call the side effects. Everything has side effects. For example, when you take medicine, it tells you do not, really mix with alcohol. It can cause drowsiness. Remember those things? It might cure your runny nose, but can cause drowsiness. In every aspect of human life, we have those side effects. So when you bring certain changes, you should always ask at what cost. As a leader, we should be very careful with this, at what cost. And sometimes, massive changes are very necessary, and the cost, may actually be high, but you think it's necessary. That's fine. We should do those things. But sometimes may not be worth it. So as schools, as teachers, we should be very careful to look at both sides of this thing. This really comes from my Chinese background, both Yin and Yang. And I found this message is really well taken with this leadership. So we should examine this thing. Another thing as leaders, I think today, in this one, is I don't want to call it empower, respecting other people's autonomy. To inspire people to become leaders in their own is becoming important. This idea about how do you take advantage of your autonomy. I found out, I speak to a lot of schools, teachers, students. Everyone today feels like not empowered. We're blaming somebody else. And like teachers say, well, I really want to change. It's the darn parents. They're really holding me back, right? And sometimes we teachers, I really am interested in doing your own thing. My principal is so backwards thinking. That's, so I got principals. Oh, really, Dr. Zhao, your ideas, I've been thinking all the time. I agree with everything. But my teachers, they never want to change. And some of schools said, well, there was, hey, we like this idea, but it's the darn state. They have this mandates, We always have that. That's not entrepreneur thinking. A good leader said, we know there's a problems. We need to find a way to confront it. It's like the same idea. Think about gravity. we all live in a world filled with gravity. How come only a few people said, hey, let's conquer, let's go to invent some rockets, we can fly over there. Almost every culture has a legendary kind of fairy tale about how people flew, left the earth to the moon, but very few cultures actually began to sit down to invent things to do that, to conquer gravity. That's entrepreneurial thinking. Is that the big difference? We all face the same problem, we don't like it, but very few actually took action. You know, that's something I hope we can think about, the whole process. The US has always been built by entrepreneur leaders, entrepreneur spirit, and we might be losing that in our students if we only teach them to become employees. So that's something I want to be careful. I also want to just use this good opportunity to talk about leadership, entrepreneurs thinking, creativity. A lot of times they may become the same idea. We're only talking about one thing. A person who is not willing to accept what fate has dealt him. That's it. We're just talking someone who is willing to act, to change what he was dealt with, what he was given. That's something that's so very American. That's very simple American spirit. But our schools, our society sometimes can kill that, stifle that. So when many Asian countries ask me, said, how do American schools teach creativity, entrepreneurship? I said, they don't. American schools don't teach creativity or entrepreneurship any better, any more intentionally than others. We just killed it less successfully than others. We don't do as a good job. That's basically it. Why? Because we have had traditionally a broad curriculum, more tolerant teachers, more tolerant curriculum, and we are losing that because of the whole thing. So entrepreneurship, leadership, creativity, basically confront problems as opportunities.
And thinking along the same path about taking these risks. If you were a classroom teacher, what would your first risk be in taking the step towards creating this entrepreneurial classroom environment for your students?
Well, I think your first risk is that you won't get a good score and you have pay for performance, your salary may go down. That's something like that. Well, that could be, right? Some of them things is, could be, right? I don't know, you should know. But the serious thinking is that a lot of times we engage something. Human beings are very good at following certain patterns. You know why chain stores, we love chain stores? Because they're predictable. You know, right? You know, you go to McDonald's here, a Big Mac is this much money, is this much money, is this much mayonnaise, this much mayonnaise. You can predict that, right? But it's boring, right? Okay, that's boring. But we like that. So in terms of you want to teach entrepreneur spirit in your classroom, the first thing you risk is, what if my child does not learn what they should learn? That's the first question. What if the parents come into the argument and say, God, my children cannot even read after doing this crazy entrepreneur stuff, you know? So that's your first risk. I think you need to have a mindset change. There's nothing a child should learn. It's nothing, okay, unless they want to learn. So that's something, we always have this great idea that you should learn this. No, I don't, you know. I said, I'd rather be ignorant. I'd be fine, you know. So it's okay. I'm not celebrating anti-intellectualism, but I'm saying that nobody should prescribe something that my child should know. So I'm really anti this idea. You know, the Common Core, for example, a lot of people say, oh, they're so smart people, they came up with this great idea that your child should learn. I said, no, my child is my own children. I don't care if they learn what they meet the state expectation. We're not Soviet Union. We're not producing state workers, you know, just over this thing. So you have to get rid of the idea that children should learn something. Children should reach this level. And that's the thing about your children. Remember, the height example, you can't stretch them. They have a natural process. So the first risk you take is, can you get away from the idea that I have to do this job, you know? Another thing is that creativity and curiosity we're talking about, if you don't develop any of them, it takes time. You should let your children drive the learning path. For example, sometimes you get some kids come in schools, they really have some great ideas, but you say, oh, no, we don't have time. We got to cover this whole thing, right? We don't have time for that. Let me give you an example. I do a lot of international comparative thinking about math. Math is a good example. In the US, when your first grade students comes in, you have, for example, you're asking, well, so Mary, what's 1 plus 1? If Mary says 5, okay, very confident 5. And you can, most American teachers, you will not say, Mary, that's wrong. You will say, Mary, that's a very interesting answer. Can you say more about it? Now that's great teaching. That's good teaching. But that's now being criticized as bad teaching because you're not teaching mathematical correctness. But that's great because you are giving the children a chance to explain why it could be 5. It could be. There's nothing wrong with that. And now actually all the Asian countries trying to learn from America and say, hey, that's a great idea. So all you go to China, everyone's trying to say, that's an interesting answer. That's not wrong. Okay. And just change the whole thing. So basically, you have to accept the fact learning, I call education, is much longer term than instruction. Most of our measurement has to do with instruction, not education. Education, you never know really when education is valuable or not, unless you can only guarantee provide a good education environment. You can't say this thing. I'm sure all of you do not remember which day you learned what facts. You probably don't even remember what was useful when you learn something right now. What you remembered in your elementary school is somebody who made you feel good, or somebody make you feel really bad. Remember that time? I hope you should have a kind of maybe add mood or say, how did my teacher hurt me, and something like that, you know, and also how my teacher helped me. So you remember those great human elements development. So in the sense that teachers take the risk, look at education, not look at only instruction.
Excellent. Well, in just a moment, we're going to have a chance for Dr. Fagan and you to have a brief dialogue. We do have a little bit of time left, but before we do that, we are going to go ahead and ask you our final question from the audience today. And that one is, it just disappeared from my notes, friends. Where did it go? There it is. Okay, what are your honest thoughts on testing, and how much is too much?
Well, anything's too much. I've hated, but by the way, I'm a very good test taker. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here. You know, in China, that's what I thrived by test taking. I used to be so excited about taking tests because that's the time it make me feel really good. Okay, so it was good. And however, I think standardized testing it measures very narrowly. You want to be very careful. So there are a few kids who thrive, but we thrive at the expense of other kids. Seriously, that's very, very, very dangerous. And also in your school, I know you can't avoid testing. You cannot avoid. You have to take these tests. What you should be thinking about, some advice, at least do not sacrifice your teaching to meet the demands of testing. If you catch yourself teaching to the test, if you catch yourself giving children extra packet to prepare for test, if you're catching yourself reflecting too much about children getting that test scores, you are not being an honest, good teacher. Ren, I think I've always said when I send my children to a teacher, I'm looking at them as the guardian of my children's dreams, their own benefit. You're not there to make them ready to take the test. You notice how nervous some young children can be taking tests? That's like damaging kids. You as adults, if someone wants to come here to cause physical harm to your students, you wouldn't let that happen. If you are causing psychological harms, would you let that happen? You shouldn't. Right? So, do you see what I mean? So that's something we need to work very hard. I know in this very complex world, we have a lot of issues to deal with. On the one hand is accountability. On the other hand is what truly education is. So I hope you will have an environment, a district, and I hope my coming in here indicates a willingness to have different kind of dialogues about this, because we are after a public school. A public school have to be accountable to somebody. And accountability has to have some kind of indicator. Do you see what I mean? So what would that indicator be? And I don't like test scores at all. And I like to have the professional autonomy. Unfortunately, not everybody agrees with me. So we got to hold this down teachers accountable. I said, well, you know, I trust them. So the idea. So I know that accountability business, honestly, is not well justified. I actually have been calling it education is a faith-based business. If you don't hold the churches accountable, you shouldn't hold education accountable. And have you tried to hold? No, but unfortunately, church is not a public entity, right? I've always joked about it. If we want to know if a church is effective sending people upstairs or downstairs, yeah. I know Colorado. I can't make a lot of religious jokes in Colorado. It's a very dangerous place. But just if we did that, how would you measure which church would be? What church you would go to? So because I'm looking at long term, so what other effects? So testing, in essence, I will be very cautious with side effects. A lot of times, you may want to treat testing today as gravity. Okay, it's something you cannot escape at this moment. But what can we do as entrepreneurs to combat, minimize the negative impact of it? And is there other ways we can do to, again, not only minimize, maybe we can get rid of in the long run, in the something. Because it's not, the testing today is not only a district thing now. It's not a teacher thing. It's a state, it's a national deal now. So this is actually much more important to think about as public citizens, not just teachers.
All right, Dr. Fagan, we'd like to give you about 5 minutes if you have any thinking that you'd like to share with the audience based on what Dr. Zhao has said today, or have any further questions for him. We do have about 5 minutes before we need to get him rolling out towards his flight, so we'd love to hear your thoughts.
Well, I just want to say thank you for being here with us today and giving us your honest thinking about all of this. So what advice do you have for, I loved your last comment about being entrepreneurial within the boundaries that we have, because the reality is we do have well-meaning and well-intended legislatures and federal governments who do hand down these sort of mandates that we all have to follow. And so being entrepreneurial in our response, I think, is exactly where we want to go, and improving autonomy and empowerment and all of those pieces. But as you have reflected, and I know you haven't had like 5 minutes to yourself, so maybe you haven't reflected, but as you think about the work that you've done over the past few days with various groups of teacher leaders and leaders in our district, what are your final thoughts, or if sort of like, well, Douglas County, I feel like I know you better, and here's my advice as I leave to go forward?
From what I've interacted with, I think now you are in a very critical time, because historically, it's a good time for you to have some serious dialogues about this stuff. I think you're trying different policies, different curriculum, you're trying to revise, to move forward. I think this is probably the best time to reflect your own identity. What do we really want to be? I presented one view. That's not necessarily best view, but I think it's the best, so you have to believe me. And there are others who think, we want to go back to traditional idea. Well, that's not bad. But I think you need to ask that question. But all of these things is that I would say that schools have traditionally been very conservative, and teachers were not bred. We didn't choose this profession because we want to be innovative. We choose this one because we want to be safe. We don't want to change. It's teaching. That's different. If I want to do innovative things, I would be a Wall Street banker, so I can make money by playing with other people's money. That's a different. That's a much high risk to this one. So, but I think now, however, we face a time that we need to do a lot of change. But you are a huge district. I haven't seen people trying to make massive movement of such large district, and this change, as I was talking to you yesterday, has to be a cultural change. And cultural change can be hardly mandated. Cultural change can only be cultivated and grow. So that's something I think will be very important, and that can only be through dialogue. We can mandate mechanical changes. We cannot mandate value changes. I cannot say, okay, tomorrow you're going to believe in this change of religion. You can't. It's only through convincing and confrontation. By the way, I want to say that confrontation is very valuable in a reasonable way, that we lay out different things, because without true confrontation, you may have token compliance. You don't get real compliance, value buy-in, all those things. So I would suggest lots of dialogue, creating opportunities for confrontational views put on the table, and arguing in a nice way. Maybe get your students to moderate. That sometimes found students are more rational than adults, over educational issues. So maybe get some of them to do this thing. And so I think I really want to appreciate. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to interact and have an honest conversation with everything. I've honestly Unless 2 days, I've never withheld my own view. I've probably been even more radical than I thought I would be. And sometimes also I want to be very proactive because I think it's necessary to go to extreme to different times because we have been the other way. So I hope you will take what I was trying to do as a way to provoke you to think differently. But everything I said needs action people to implement. And the book is not a prescription. It's only a call or invitation for you to rethink what's possible, what our children need to do. This is a big, big work. We've been following the old paradigm for hundreds of years. Now we're changing a new paradigm. It's very hard to think. And most innovators, Machiavelli would have said, innovators, nobody like innovators. Because innovators necessarily cause inconvenience to other people. Do you see what I mean? Necessary. Even though those people might benefit from the innovation, may not like you very much because you cause inconvenience to them. And also in the early days, it's very nice to criticize innovators. Myself, I've been creating a lot of innovations. I know this very well. In the early stage, the innovators have to justify why I'm good. After the tipping point, those followers have to justify why I know the innovator. We're good friends before. I used to support him 5 years ago. You have to think about this movement between the whole thing. So innovators or entrepreneurs, you do not gain, I told Dr. Fagan this in the car, as entrepreneurs, innovators, you should not try to gain joy or satisfaction from other people's feedback. It has to be from your own. Most entrepreneurs do not necessarily make more money. They just are more happy because they're doing something they want to do. They're not following something. So I would encourage you to seek that satisfaction and joy from the work you do, not necessarily from somebody who is going to love you. You won't get a lot of love you people. That's something very important. Plus, who cares if people love you? You're Douglas County. You're so far away. Nobody knows you are here anyway. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, John. As we close out our evening, we wanted to let you know that the archive of this evening's talk by Dr. Zhao will be available. Our communications department will follow up with that link to the recording. The Center for Professional Development is continually looking to improve our learning opportunities and would appreciate you taking the time to fill out a short feedback form for us. Our back channel moderators will post the link to that feedback forms in each of our back channels now. We would like to thank all of you so much for attending today and sharing such insightful questions. And we'd like to send a special thank you to Dr. Jim Calhoun and his staff here at Castleview High School who really bent over backwards for us today. As well as to our IT staff for making this such a memorable evening. On behalf of the Center for Professional Development and all of our educators in Douglas County School District, a heartfelt thankful to you, Dr. Zhao, for all of your leadership and innovative thinking.